Welcome back, everybody, to A to Z CFB poll podcast. This is Zachary Siegel, and we're going to go over the top 25 for this week, as well as some other news in the current Heisman ladder. Thank you for clicking on this video if you're watching. Um, Make sure you go like, subscribe, and go find us on TikTok and Twitter as well. That being said, let's get into it. So we're going to start today with some of the news out of the week. The biggest two things that I want to talk about are Mike Gundy's firing and the fact that there is no change to the playoff format, which I kind of feel like we saw this coming, right? Although there's been a lot of push by the SEC and Big Ten to make it like that 16 team with four auto bids each and blah blah blah. It does seem like right now not changing it from where it is without giving automatic bias to division winners is kind of the most fair way to do it at the moment. And I think unless you're going to do a 16 team with 12 at-large bids, I don't really see how you can, fairly do this for the Big 12 and the ACC. The slightly bigger news, though, is Mike Gundy got fired. And I saw a lot of interesting takes about this. And if you follow me on TikTok, then you kind of already know my opinion on this. But there's a lot of outrage about, he's the greatest coach of all time and he's been there for a couple decades and all this, that, and the next. But I don't really see anything actually wrong with this. I think that Mike Gundy, his time was up, and outside of some very rare cases like Kurt Signetti, right? You rarely see a team immediately turn it around and become a contending team. I wouldn't even call Indiana yet a real contending team. They could end up being by the end of the season, but right, they're not a team that everyone's thinking, oh, they're beating Ohio State, right? If you don't think that Mike Gundy is going to be able to do that in the next 3 to 5 years, then move on, right? Because that's how long it's going to take for another coach to do it. If you don't find one in your first try, which you likely won't, you're going to need another one. So right now you're talking about an 8-year process, 9-year process roughly to get back into the spotlight of college football. And while it might have been more of a courtesy to let him try a couple more years, you kind of gave up. Giving up on it now makes sense because if you don't, right, you're going to, spend a lot more time. You're going to spend a lot more time later on figuring it out anyway. And it wasn't like the last several years have been that great. I know they made the Big 12 championship 2 years ago, but people weren't really expecting that to happen, right? Ollie Gordon sort of came out of nowhere, and this team really overperformed. Conversely, last year they had a really bad year once they, 3 years ago they made it, 2 years ago, uh, whatever. The point being is this isn't like it was like a 1 year he crapped the bed and then they moved on. This was kind of coming, and things move fast in college football, but they move a lot faster when you're 2 decades in. So that's kind of the news of the week. Moving into the current Heisman watch list, that is going to be as follows. Number 5, Devon Dampier. He had just a really bad game this last week. I would like to keep him on this list because I think he could bounce back, but I do think that this game really hurt his chances. Number 4, Gunnar Stockton from Georgia. He had a crazy game 2 weeks ago against Tennessee, and if he can show out against Bama in the coming weeks, I think that he's going to continue to rise up this list. Thomas Castellanos from Florida State. I know they didn't play last week, or 2 weeks ago. They played last week, but this is still a team that a player that has been playing out of his mind, and this Miami game will really have a huge effect on this race, especially since my number 2 guy from Miami, Carson Beck, he has been playing, frankly, better than he maybe ever played at Georgia, and this Miami team looks pretty unstoppable right now. And finally, number 1 is Haynes King from Georgia Tech. Haynes King has been, like I said, playing really good football, and this isn't new. He's been playing really good football. He's just now getting a little bit more of the national spotlight. I think that's really going to propel him into a much better chances of winning the Heisman. Now, I did want to note, John Mateer would have been on this list had he not gotten injured. I think the injury will just keep him out for slightly too long, and that's just going to, absolutely tank his chances. All right. into what you guys are actually here for, and that is the A to Z CFB top 25 for week 5. Your honorable mentions: Mississippi State, Illinois, Maryland, Memphis, Utah, Louisville, Kansas, Arizona State, and Syracuse. Some of these teams, have lost a game or just haven't had the competition yet to be there and weren't, previously invited to the party. So in the coming weeks, maybe we'll see some of these teams on this list. Maybe some other teams will fall off. Who knows? But that being said, we are going to go like we did the last couple of weeks from 25 to 1. And we're going to talk about each of these teams that I rank and why I ranked them, where I ranked them. So, number 25, that is going to be the BYU Cougars. They beat East Carolina 34-13 in their first week on this list. It's kind of been a long time coming. You definitely could have made a case for them last week. But I think they're playing really good football right now. Bear Bachmeier is playing really well for a true freshman. And I think they're going to get kind of a real test over the next couple of weeks once Big 12 play for them really starts. With that being said, BYU, they have the advantage of a relatively easy schedule this year. And I think that that is going to really help them, potentially even make the Big 12 championship. Number 24, up one from last week, is Notre Dame. They had a pretty dominant victory over Purdue. And while I don't think that this is a particularly impressive win, it was nice to see their offense firing on all cylinders and finally capturing a win, at least somewhat validating their spot on this list. Number 23 is going to be the Washington Huskies. After losing the Apple Cup last year, they were not going to let that happen with a 59-24 victory over their cross-state rivals, Washington State. This time it was in their own home. And that was just an overall dominant performance. And I know there's a lot of people who are really low on the Huskies. I think they had the most turnaround this year of any school, any power school. But look, we're going to see the real test this week when they go play Ohio State, which actually Ohio State comes to them. And we all know how hard it is to win up in the Great Northwest. Number 22, that is the Texas Christian University Horned Frogs. They had a 35-24 win over Southern Methodist. And look, TCU is playing some really, really quality football right now. This was an impressive victory, but the road doesn't really get easy, right? Like BYU, I said, has an easy schedule. TCU is one of the harder schedules in the Big 12. They play Arizona State in this upcoming week to kind of navigate this logjam that is the Big 12. But with one of the best receiving cores in the country, and I genuinely believe that, they're about as equipped as you can get to break through the mold. Number 21, down some spots from last week after a 55-0 victory over Sam Houston State. That's going to be the Texas Longhorns. Texas at 21 feels right. It was a little bit of a corrective move. They're not playing good football. They have the talent. They really do. They really have the talent to get there. But there's some problem with this program. And I mean, part of it was like, look, I just don't believe in what they're doing. I think that their defense hasn't been playing that phenomenally, and their offense has been a whole lot of nothing. And a lot of that comes back to Arch Manning, and maybe that has to do with the expectations we put on him. But I think it at most comes down to Steve Sarkisian. I think I've said this before. He's very creative. He's a very intuitive football mind, but he has not been a good coach. And I think that this 3-1 Longhorns team could very well have lost another game or two, frankly, at this point. Not to mention, like, Arch standing over a Sam Houston State defender. Not to mention, Sam Houston State's in the midst of a rebuild after losing their head coach, Casey Keeler, this last year. Like, this is not even remotely as good as the Sam Houston State team that was last year, which Texas probably would have blown them out worse last year. Number 20, another new team to this list, but that's going to be the USC Trojans. Probably also a team that I was maybe a little late to the party on, but being 4-0 with a 45-31 victory over Michigan State, they have a quality 4-0, right? They're quiet and quality, right? Jordan Mailata is playing some really, really good football right now. And that was a pretty dominant victory over what isn't necessarily a bad team in Michigan State, even if their record won't really reflect it. Staying in Michigan, though, number 19 is the Michigan Wolverines. They don't move up or down after this week, after this week 4 win against Nebraska. They're 3-1. Look, they're just clearly not the dominant team that they were, but there was a lot of really good flashes, and I think that Bryce Underwood is looking better and better each week. I think this team will steadily climb this list, and if they can continue to get back to the ways where they were, especially now that Sharon Moore is coming back, I think we're going to see, a Michigan team that could very quietly find themselves competing for a Big Ten championship later in the season. Number 18, the Tennessee Volunteers. They put a hurting on UAB 56-24. They look, they played they're kind of riding a little on that really good game against Georgia a couple weeks ago, the number 5 team in the country, and they took them they went 13 rounds with them. And while I think that Tennessee definitely has the talent to get there, I think that they just need to get some more quality wins. But I think they could absolutely find themselves competing, especially in the playoffs, should it all work out later in the season. Number 17, Missouri. They're up 5 spots from last week. And I genuinely do think this is the best team that Missouri has had over the last couple seasons. Um, Regardless of, the talent they had on their team on at least the offensive side of the ball last year and the year before, Luther Burden, Nate Knoll, or Noel, Brady Cook, the talent that they had, Armand Membo, right? Sorry. This is a team that just took down a full strength South Carolina team, that I think arguably could be higher than what they are right now. But they're slowly rising, and I think we're going to keep seeing them slowly rise. I think this is the most talented team. I think that Coach Drink knows what he's doing finally, and I think that this defense is going to be very, very formidable. Number 16, the 2-1 Crimson Tide. They're one of 2 teams on this list without 3 or more wins so far, but they are 2-1. They did not have a game last week. But they have to prepare for the Mean Machine in red and black in Georgia. And look, if Chris Brazell can torch the Bulldog secondary, I have to imagine Ryan Williams is going to have a field day. I don't think that Bama or Georgia are going to roll in there and steamroll the others, but I do think it's going to be a really, really good game, a rematch of one of the, if not the best games from last season. Number 15, the Ole Miss Rebels. Hotty Toddy, they are 4-0 with a 45-10 victory over Tulane, a team that I had ranked last week. And I thought, especially with the woes of Austin Simmons, I think that that they could absolutely give him a run for their money. And while it was relatively close early, Ole Miss ultimately was too much to handle for him. And although they're starting Ferris State transfer Trinidad Chambliss, who was, I believe he was like their version of the Heisman at that level last year. Um, the quarterback hasn't seemed to matter, right? They're still winning. There's the rest of this team is really picking up the slack. And if Chambliss can do what he needs to do and they can put it all together, I think that they're going to give LSU a hell of a time. Number 14, that's the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I got the hat on. It's relatively new, and I went there last year. It was a nice time. Didn't love the college town, but hey, why should I at 25 years old? Texas Tech, they're 4-0 with a 34-10 victory over Utah. This was a great win over Utah. Team, that I've been talking about, if you've been watching this for a while, a team that I've been talking about very highly for a while, a team that I had in the top 10. Utah is a really good program, and this defense, this is the most expensive team in the country, really showed why they were so expensive. Joey McGuire really had some questions and a lot of weight on his shoulders this year, saying, look, you have all this talent. Your job is to manage personalities and make sure they can all work together, and they're working together really, really well. I don't necessarily think 34-10 tells the whole story, but I do think that this is a really, really good, and if they get some chemistry, dangerous Texas Tech team. Number 13, that is going to be the Vanderbilt Commodores. 4-0 Vandy again, with a 70-21 victory over Georgia State. I don't know why Georgia State keeps deciding to play SEC teams where they have collectively lost 133-28 against both Vandy and Ole Miss. But I do think that, relatively ballsy of them. Vanderbilt, though, they're playing really good football. Diego Pavia did the thing that I've been hoping he would, which is put his head down and just play some ball. And they have a chance to do the funniest thing ever when they travel to Tuscaloosa in a couple weeks. Do you imagine if Bama comes off of a loss to Georgia and then loses to Vanderbilt? Or if they somehow upset Georgia and then Vanderbilt comes in and handles business there? I think that would be just hilarious. And it would make my life a relative nightmare for ranking teams, but I live for the chaos. Number 12, that's the Iowa State Cyclones. They're 4-0. They didn't play last week because they played in the week 0. And while they did fall out of the top 10 just because some other teams rose, this is still a really, really good team and still my favorite to win the Big 12, or at least to be in the Big 12 championship. This is a team that they get to play an Arizona team this next week that has been playing a lot better football than expected this year. And they beat every team in the same way, right? They haven't been blowing teams out. They don't blow teams out. They get a lead and then they strangle the defense. They strangle their offense. And it works. It works for them. Matt Campbell has done a really, really good job of creating the most disciplined team out there, and that's what they are, the most disciplined team out there. They might not necessarily have the best athletes, the highest talent profile, or even above a 50% blue chip ratio, but they will be more disciplined than your team. Number 11, the Oklahoma Sooners. I probably would have had them higher, frankly. I would have had them higher if it wasn't for the John Mateer thing. And I know that it sucks when your quarterback goes out. I mean, hell, this was a hell of a week for Oklahoma football, just as a state, right? Tulsa, great win. You're happy up in the northeastern corner of Oklahoma. And then Oklahoma State, you lose to Tulsa, and then you lose your Hall of Fame head coach, and then Oklahoma loses their quarterback. So, and the Heisman front runner. Regardless of it, they've been here before, and it's Michael Hawkins' time. And if they continue to win with Michael Hawkins, you bet yourself they will rise further in. On to the top 10. Number 10, that is going to be the Texas A&M Aggies. Again, didn't play last week. They had an off week, but they get a very, very good Auburn team. And while that Auburn team is not ranked because they lost this last week, I do think that this is a very dangerous team. And if what they're trying, if what they cook doesn't explode in the oven, they could absolutely upset the Aggies. And I think that Texas A&M, while they're a very, very talented team, should absolutely not overlook the Auburn Tigers. Number 9. I'm sorry. Number 9, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They are 4-0 with a 45-24 victory over Temple, and not necessarily a pushover Temple team, right? Oklahoma gave up some points to them too this year. Actually, they might not. They might have blanked them. Regardless, Georgia Tech has been a very, very good team this year. They got their victory over Clemson, which, while it doesn't necessarily look as impressive now, they still are playing some really, really good football. But this isn't new. They've been playing really good football. And like I said, when I had Haynes King as my number 1 in the current Heisman ladder, he's been playing really good football. Go back, look at that Georgia game last year. Go look at that Florida State game, the year week 0 last year, right? This is a couple years in the making that Haynes King has been one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the ACC for a little bit now. Number 8, Indiana. 63-10 victory over what was a top 10 ranked, well, now not, I think they were number 11 in mine, but a top 10 ranked by the AP Illinois team. I fell victim to the preseason propaganda a little bit. I drank a little bit too much of the Illinois Kool-Aid. I fell into the trap of they have a lot of people returning. They have a returning coach, a veteran players at the right positions. Therefore, they have to be good, right? Guess not necessarily true. Indiana and Kurt Cignetti just seems to be, Jesus himself walking on water, turning stuff into wine and blessing people, right? He's just getting the most out of every player that comes his way. And I guess I should just learn to never doubt the Sig. Number 7, Florida State with a dominant victory over Drew DeShields and Kent State. 66-10. I think DeShields ended up getting hit out of the game anyway. Obviously, the Noles blew out Kent State. But this next week, they have their real test. The final real battle for Florida, right? We've been kind of eliminating teams. Miami's just been knocking them off. And the last last true battle for Florida against Miami and Florida State will be brought to you in 2 weeks. First, though, they got to take on Virginia and make sure they don't stumble and fall there. Number 6, the Ohio State Buckeyes. 3-0, didn't play this last week. Um, but they need to prepare for this upcoming week. This is a team where their offense has not been playing really well. Their defense has been fine, but they really haven't been that tested. I know they played Texas, but again, I think, and I will say this till I die, I think that that was way more of an indictment on Texas being bad and not being able to get anything done on offense, or frankly had a good defensive day, than it was on Ohio State beating them. I think that Ohio State is, you know, they're obviously a very good team, but it is really, really hard to win football games in the Great Northwest. And guess what happened when they went there last year? When they went up to Oregon last year, when they went to the Great Northwest last year, they lost. All right, before we get into the top five, if you are still here, I would like to thank you. These are fun to make, but sometimes you make them for nobody. And uh, I appreciate anybody who is listening and still here. And if you have the time, go check me out on TikTok. Go check me out on Twitter. Instagram page coming soon. And without further ado, let's get into the top five. So I kind of spoiled it for you already when talking about Alabama, but number 5 is going to be Georgia, the Mean Machine in red and black. They are 3-0 right now. They did not have a game this last week, but that's probably a good thing. They will be playing host to Bama, and after that tough Tennessee overtime victory, Gunnar Stockton showed a ton of promise and really took that step forward that I think that at least shows that he's in the process of taking that step forward that I think a lot of people were hoping to see from him coming into this year. I think this is going to be a really, really good game, and I don't think Georgia should anticipate walking in there and destroying them, because frankly, they didn't do that to Tennessee. And I think that, Tennessee is arguably an easier opponent than Bama. They're going to have their hands full with Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams, running in the outfield, especially. Like I said, hey, Chris Brazell had himself a 3-touchdown, like 150-yard day against them, and he would be, wide receiver 2 or 3 on that Bama team. So Georgia needs to get their secondary right, but I have no doubt that Kirby Smart will do everything in his power to help with that. Number 4, Louisiana State University. They will be going to Oxford, Mississippi this weekend after finishing their final warm-up game against Southeastern Louisiana. I know they already played Clemson, but at this point, is that not a warm-up game? Where they're 4-0. They beat Southeastern Louisiana 66-10. This is a team, you could really mix and match any of these top 4 teams. They were 2 last week. They're 4 this week. They're probably, unless they, lose or get blown out or something, they won't drop out of the top. Probably 10. We'll see what happens. I don't want to make up my mind before the game happens, but look, they have not an easy schedule. LSU, while they might be the most talented team on paper, at least playing like it on paper, LSU does not have an easy road to the college football playoff, but I do think if there's a team equipped for it right now, it is the Tigers. Number 3, Penn State. This is the lowest I've had Penn State all year. And who knows? Maybe that's I think just because of the coaching matchup this week. James Franklin, and I'll spoil number 2 for you because this makes sense here. Oregon is number 2, right? You have Penn State coming off of not playing anybody, preparing themselves to host the Oregon Ducks in the biggest Big Ten showdown that we've had so far this year, and the Oregon Ducks, who are traveling away from their home in the Great Northwest after a 41-7 victory in the cross-state rivalry between them and Oregon State. You got 2 undefeated teams, in my opinion, top 2 teams in the conference, going against each other, ready to duke it out. They switched spots this week, and I can't imagine that Penn State is going to be super happy about that. James Franklin really has a great opportunity to finally win in a big game when it matters the most. And Dan Lanning, while he's done it before, finally has an opportunity to back it up. Both teams have had their struggles this year. Penn State's offense, Oregon making sure that Dante Moore has his head right and doing what he's supposed to do. I think we're going to see a gritty, 28-31 kind of game that really comes down to the end. And I'm really, really excited to see, can Drew Aller step up? Can Dante Moore show that poise? Are we going to see these defenses show out, or is this going to be an absolute slugfest on the ground with that amazing rushing duo in Penn State? I am so excited to see what happens in this game, and I will be watching it no matter where I am. Finally, though, number one, if you haven't guessed it, the current Kings of Florida and defeating Florida 26-7. That is the Miami Hurricanes. How long has it been since we've had a mid-season or at some point during the season ACC team who is currently leading the whole thing? And I think that's really fun because Miami is playing the best football that they had. They had a better quarterback last year in Cam Ward, but Carson Beck is making really good throws, knowing when to step up, knowing when to throw it away, knowing when to do what he needs to do. And he is doing it at a high level. There's a reason why he's so high on my Heisman list. And I think that this game coming up in 2 weeks against Florida State is going to be a really, really good one. Miami is yet to leave Florida, I believe, in their this season, and they won't have to do it for another 2 weeks. They have an off week this week, so they can fully prepare for their in-conference rival, Florida State. All right. I don't know about you guys, but I am super excited for this upcoming week of football and really the next couple weeks of football. I'm excited for the whole thing, but this next couple weeks of college football are really going to shape what this season turns out to do, and I am excited to watch, and I'm excited to talk about it with you guys and continue to watch and catch up with you guys. Starting not this week, but the first week of October, I will be traveling every single weekend until the end of the football season to a different college football stadium. So keep up on TikTok with that and come check it out. Come see me if you're there, and we'll talk ball. We'll do whatever. And I'm excited to get this ball rolling. Thanks again for watching. If you made it this far, make sure you leave a comment. Tell me what you think's going to happen. Who's winning this week, Oregon or Penn State? What did I get wrong? What did I get right? Go watch some football. See you next week.